Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tradition Kitchens. We are so excited to have you on this Saturday afternoon for some, morning for others, evening for others. We have a global community joining us today. We like to invite you to turn on your video on the bottom left of Zoom. You're already pre-muted. And I'm Julia. Welcome on behalf of the Tradition Kitchens community. We're so excited to be featuring Alak today to share an incredible dish from her culture. We have a fun tradition at Tradition Kitchens where we like to get to know the people who we are cooking with as if we are hanging out in real life in our neighbors' houses. And we do our intros in the chat. So everyone has the ability to type in the chat. We'd love to hear who you are and where you're calling in from. If you could kick us off in the chat. So I'm Julia and I'm in the Atlanta area. Let's see where everybody is from. As you are doing that, I want to welcome, we have about 40 people here. We're expecting many, many more. We're gonna do a Tradition Kitchen Cam where we put a spotlight on a few different people to introduce themselves. And it's great to see where people are calling in from. Wow, we have Germany on the line. Monique is from Miami. This is exciting. England, Seattle, New Orleans, Toronto. This is awesome. We love it. So I'm gonna do a kitchen cam spotlight. It's always nice when I can see some faces. So again, invite you to join us on video if you're able to. But let's hop over to Dina. Dee, I'm gonna spotlight you for everyone. Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Dina from Iowa City. Good to see you.
Welcome, great to see you. Are you cooking along with us today?
Yes, I did not have mung beans, but I have lentils. So I soaked those for 6 hours. I'm hoping it works out.
Awesome.
I think so. Chef, our chef, do you agree? Can we make it work with lentils?
Yeah, I think we can make it work. I think we can still do a batter with it, just leave it aside a little bit longer so that it can, and I can go into the details of it, but we can make it work.
Awesome. Great. All right. We'll do a few more intros. If you're just joining us, please say hello in the chat. Let us know where you're calling in from. Monique, I'm going to spotlight you for a quick intro.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Monique. I'm originally from Colombia, but I live in Miami for a long time. I'm really excited to learn the recipe of today.
Wonderful.
Hi, Monique.
Yes, this is great. Happy to have you. Thanks for joining. And it's great to see everyone else who's introducing themselves in the chat. So in honor of the chutney that we are making along with our dosa today, our next question in the chat is, what is your favorite flavor of chutney? Would love to hear. If you can share, if you've never tried one before, that's okay too. Maybe your favorite flavor of a jam, that could work. So let us know. It'd be great to hear. And I'm gonna spotlight a few more people on our kitchen cam. Let's see, I hope that I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Vidya, did I get it right?
Hi, Vidya.
I'm Vidya. I'm in beautiful Southern California today.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us. I love your background. It looks very Southern California.
It's a gloomy day though.
Oh, well, we hope to brighten it up with our cooking. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
All right, we've got some people are sharing their favorite flavors of chutney. We've got a lot of mango fans, which is very tropical and delicious and amazing. Let's do one or two more intros. We're 5 minutes after with 45 wonderful guests on the line, but I see P. Nace. Would you like to say hello? Tell us where you're calling in from. Make sure you unmute on the left because we can't hear you. Oh, she's showing off all of her plants.
She's trying to bring in more light, I believe.
Yes. On the left, you could unmute if you want to say hello. You see mute, unmute.
Yeah, one more time.
I
Yes.
said, I'm calling from New Orleans, and the heat index is forecast to be 110 today. So I'm inside, air conditioned, and ready to cook.
Amazing. So glad to have you here.
Yes, so great to meet you. Thank you for joining us and cooking along. We have a lot of people who are in kitchens, which is really fun to see that. We have people who like to watch and cook along, others who just are here for the show. So it's 6 minutes after. We want to be respectful of everyone's time. Once again, welcome to Tradition Kitchens. I'm Julia. My mom and I started this about 2 years ago, and the vision is to bring together different communities and cultures through food to learn each other's stories. And we are big fans of creating connections during classes. So the chat is here for you. If you haven't introduced yourself, please do so. We have friends from around the world. If you scroll back up into the chat, you can see where people are calling in from. But we really love people to join us on video. So I want to invite you to take our Tradition Kitchens selfie, which is a Zoom selfie. So if everyone could just turn on your camera for a moment so we can capture you and celebrate this exciting time that we are together on this Saturday. We love to see. So I'll call out some names: Rona, Rana, Margaret, Jerry, Betty, Marilyn, Shampa. Hey, it's great to see you. Would love to say hello. It's certainly optional, but always really fun when we get to see everyone. And if you want to see all the great faces who are here together, on the top right is gallery view. And so you can see everyone as they turn on their video. Welcome Rick and Gwen and Celeste and Sandy. Great to see so many smiling faces. All right, so it seems like we have everyone who's ready to opt in for video. And we are gonna count down. So 3, 2, 1. We'll take one more in case anybody closed their eyes. 3, just like real life, 2, 1. Fantastic. And I hope you keep your cameras on so that we can connect with each other. We understand everyone's in different places and spaces, and we hope you're all staying very safe right now. Once again, excited for today's class. The beauty of our classes is that some of our teachers, we know they're old friends. Like I see on here, Parul and her mom. I'm gonna do a quick shout out and spotlight. They actually kicked off our first Indian class. When did you all teach that, Parul?
Oh, I think that was like December, right? It was almost a New Year thing. I'm glad everyone enjoyed it.
It was so great. You started a trend. So here we are. We've had a few more amazing classes and teachers sharing their cultural traditions, including Indian, and so excited to have Alak here. We met through Instagram and have been following her and her mom's amazing small business, which we're going to learn a little bit more about during today's session. So I'm going to turn it over to her for a quick intro. I'm going to put the ingredients list in the chat in case you need it, but please just keep in mind that we are going to do our very best to answer everyone's questions, but we also don't want to disrupt too much from the demo. And so we may hold questions for a little bit, so be patient with us. So thank you all of you for being here, and Alak, let's get started.
Awesome. Thank you, Julia. This is fantastic. Firstly, thank you all for joining us from so many different places. Thank you for making the time. I'm really excited about doing this with y'all. So today I'm also from Atlanta, Georgia, by the way, like Julia. And today we're gonna make 2 dishes. So the name of the dish that we're making is called Pesarattu, which is basically a mung bean based dosa. And we're gonna make a chutney that goes with the dosa. The chutney, we're gonna make it with tomatoes because it's summer and it's tomato season. So we're gonna do that with a little bit of peanut to give it more of a base and to break the tanginess and the tartness of tomatoes. So we'll start with the tomato chutney first, so that when we make the dosa, we can just lift it off the pan and eat it hot and warm and crispy with the chutney. So to start us off, and I'll tell more about myself and what I do with my mom. I run a small business called Pudi Life with my mom. I'll tell us more about it while we're cooking. So with that, a little bit of an intro, I'm just gonna switch the camera over to my cooking station here. So what I have here are some little heirloom tomatoes that I got, and I have about a fistful. I believe Julia shared the instructions for the exact amounts as well. So I have some peanuts and I have some tomatoes. So what I'm going to start us off with is to roast these tomatoes in a shallow pan. So I'm just going to turn that on, slow roast these peanuts. We don't need any oil for this. We just need to slow roast them. And in the meantime, while these are roasting, and if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Julia will curate them and then we can answer them while we go along. So while these peanuts are roasting, I'm gonna take these tomatoes and just cut them into just halves. And then once the peanuts are roasted, I'll add these tomatoes into the same pot. So, but for now, I'm just gonna cut them and keep it aside. So be right back. I didn't keep a knife for myself.
Yeah, so, do we need any oil while roasting, or you can just put them in the pan?
So we don't need any oil. At this point of time, we don't need any oil for the peanuts. We are just waiting for the pan to heat up. So then we can, slow roast these peanuts. My pan is actually not very hot yet, which is why I'm still using my hands, but I'm gonna get myself a spatula as well. So in the meantime, let me tell you a little bit about what I do. I run this small business with my mom. It's called Podi Life. We make these blends. We make these spice blends called podis, and they're if you know what za'atar is, they're sort of like za'atar. So they're a blend of herbs, spices, nuts. They're made with very quintessential South Indian ingredients like curry leaf, peanuts, coconuts, all the lentils that you see in Indian cuisine. All of those grow abundantly. South India basically has, it's a peninsula, and it has two really large coastlines. And right next to the coastlines are two mountain ranges. So you get a very diverse, thriving biohabitat. So agriculture is a big part of livelihood for people in that area. So we grow a lot of peanuts, there's a lot of lentils, and all of that really features in the cuisine. So I was actually looking up exports of all of these ingredients that we're using in this current dish, and South India, India at large, is the largest producer of mung beans. The mung beans that we see here for us in the United States are most likely coming from China, because China's, I think, the second largest producer of mung beans. So you'll see that a lot of Indian cuisine is, like a lot of other cuisines, it's a reflection of what's grown in the area. So while these peanuts are roasting, I'm just, I'm halving my tomatoes just like that. This is going on low heat. My tomatoes are, I'm just chopping them into halves. Once the peanuts are done, I'm gonna put these tomatoes in the same pan and then cook them down. Actually, one of the best ways of cooking tomatoes is actually cooking them also on low heat and bringing it down, because there's a molecule in tomatoes called lycopene, which actually is enhanced when you cook it. So one of the best ways of eating tomatoes, which is why ketchup is so popular. Most times when you consume tomatoes, they're cooked down into a sauce, like in Italian cuisine. So lycopene is really enhanced when you cook it down. So I said two, you can take 2 big tomatoes. I've actually chopped up more than, this will probably be, you know, just about 1 big tomato and then other 2 big tomatoes. I've chopped up way more than I need because I was just enjoying the process, but you don't need to chop as many up. So I'm just gonna take about half of what I've chopped up. And then while these peanuts are roasting, can everyone see my screen okay? Julia, is everything visible?
Yeah, it looks great.
Okay.
I'm curious, what kind of tomato can you use? Like, I see you're using, I think, heirloom cherry, but any special tomato that you would recommend?
Not necessarily. I mean, I think any kind of tomato that's in season is good. The heirloom varieties are better because they tend to have a more of a tart taste. So I always just recommend using an heirloom variety. But yeah, I mean, I got some cherry tomatoes from the market today, so I decided to go with these, but you don't necessarily have to. There's no one particular type that you need to use. So one of the other ingredients that we are using in the chutney is tamarind. And tamarind is, again, another very quintessential South Indian ingredient. It's an ingredient that brings in a very beautiful tart taste. And I think I think tamarind is also used in 2 other cuisines that I know of, Mexican and Thai, but that's about it. A lot of other cuisines don't use it, but it does show up in, you know, like Worcestershire sauce and in cream of tartar, like, which is used in baking. But those are the only 2 places that I know the flavor of tamarind like really shows up. So in this case, we're going to use a little bit of tamarind because I'm going to try one of these tomatoes and see how tart it is. I would say it's a little more on the sweet side. So I'm going to add a little bit of tamarind to this for sure. My peanuts are looking good. They're, you know, some of them are starting to turn a little brown. So I'm going to continue to roast these a little longer. Peanuts do take a little bit of time. They're best when they're slow roasted. So it's better to not do it on a high flame because then you can get the entire nut to be roasted. So I'm going to give this another couple more minutes.
Can you tell us more about the tamarind? Is it, do you use the spice whole and created? Is it one that's grounded?
Yeah, absolutely. Hold on. I'm actually going to grab some and show you what it looks like. It's actually a fruit. It's a tropical fruit that grows a lot in, you know, in the tropical areas. But it shows up a lot more significantly in South Indian cuisine than in Northern Indian cuisine. So the way it looks is it actually looks like a pod, you know, so if you guys can see this. So this is one side of it. So it sort of like grows in a pod like this. And there's usually seeds inside. So this is a de-seeded, de-veined. So usually you find these, you know, these fibers that you see on here. Most processed or cleaned tamarind comes without the seed and without the fiber on it. So this is how the form that we're going to use today, this is how it looks. I actually have a little bit of henna on my hand. So yeah, so I have some tamarind here. I think we're going to use, but if you go to an international grocery store or an Indian grocery store, you do find tamarind in a concentrate form as well. So you don't necessarily have to use this, but the way to use this, since it's in its very natural form, is we'll have to soak it in a little bit of hot water so that it becomes a little bit like a pulp. And then we're just going to blend it all together. So today, and if you don't have tamarind, a good substitute is maybe like a little bit of lemon, or it can also be like a spoon of, so my peanuts are almost ready, or a spoon of apple cider vinegar, which also brings a really beautiful tartness to the chutney. So you can use either of these sources that give tartness, but a fairly traditional recipe uses tamarind. So so my peanut looks pretty good. So to this, I'll actually just add my chopped tomatoes. And since my tomatoes are a little sweet, I think all of this will balance out quite well. So I'm just gonna we'll just let it cook a little while for the tomatoes to cook down and for the juices of the tomatoes to sort of seep into the pan. And at this point of time, actually adding a little bit of salt is a great idea because salt tends to bring the water out of the vegetables. So let me grab my salt. I'm just gonna take just a half a teaspoon, not too much. I'm starting to smell some blistered tomatoes. It smells delicious already. Okay, so in the meantime, while that is happening, while the tomatoes are cooked down a little bit, I'm gonna grab just a tiny bowl, put some hot water in here, and add about just that much tamarind. It's literally maybe a small tennis ball. I don't think it's even a tennis ball actually. To half a tennis ball, half a table tennis ball, I would say. That's the size that we're using. So very little tamarind. I'm gonna add hot water to this so the pulp of the tamarind comes out. So again, other ways in which you can bring the tartness into this chutney, because there's the little bit of the tartness from the tomatoes, a little bit of sweetness from the tomatoes, and then you have a really like sort of meatiness from the peanut. So really want to balance that out with some tartness. So we'll bring the tartness with either some sort of a vinegar. So it could be like an apple cider vinegar, or a little bit of lemon juice would work, but preferably tamarind. So this looks pretty good.
Question for you, if someone's using tamarind concentrate,
yes.
Any idea how much you would use?
So I would use about a tablespoon. Actually, the concentrate tends to be pretty concentrated. I would start with a teaspoon. So we'll start with a teaspoon, and then once we make the chutney, we can. Hello?
Yeah, we're here.
Okay, awesome. We'll start with a teaspoon, and once as you're making the chutney, we can taste it and we can talk about the tasting notes once the chutney is done. But I would say start with a teaspoon. That should be good. Okay, so I've turned this off because my tomatoes are fairly blistered, and I just want this to cool down before we grind it in a grinder. So the tomatoes will continue to cook in the heat of the pan. At this point, I'm just gonna get my tamarind paste ready. So I'm gonna add some hot water to this bowl of tamarind that I have.
The before and after of this shot is so different. It's so interesting to see how the tomatoes are boiling down.
Yeah.
Anyone who's cooking along, how's it going? Any questions? Anyone want to show a kitchen cam to let us know how it's going? Dina, I'm going to add you to the spotlight. Wow. Looks beautiful. For a second, I almost thought you had corn in there, but those are the peanuts?
Yeah, I had one giant tomato, so I only used one. And then I didn't have any regular peanuts, so I used barbecue. So it'll be interesting to see how that tastes.
Yeah, that should
yeah,
that should still work because barbecue has the flavor itself has a bit of an earthiness to it. And one of the things that you'll see we'll add in a little later is these curry leaves, which also have a very earthy taste. So I think that might actually work. So let's see how that tastes.
Thank you for showing us. I love it. And if anyone else wants to, just raise your hand or I'll go in gallery view and try to find you. But let's keep going. Looks great. I've actually never seen a curry leaf. I had no idea it was green.
Oh yeah, yeah. So they look like this. That's how that looks. The curry leaf is different from, you know, curry powder that we are used to seeing in stores. So the term curry powder, it actually came because it was, you know, earlier, the earliest Indian immigrants or Indian origin immigrants that came in, they opened a lot of small restaurants that were just called curry houses. And a lot of the, I mean, like the blends that they used to make the curries just ended up being called curry powder, but they actually have no relation to curry leaf. So curry leaf is quite different from curry powder. Most curry powders, I mean, if it's a well-made curry powder, you do tend to see some bits of curry leaf in them, as in it's used in the processing of curry powder, but curry leaf is, yeah, definitely a very different ingredient. That's actually not necessarily a big part of curry powder. Okay, so we have this. This needs to cool down before we can actually blend it. So while this is cooling down, what we can do is I'll actually add, so this is how my, you know, the tamarind pulp looks. I added a lot of hot water in it, and then you can see how, you know, this is what we started off with, which is a lot of the pulpiness on the fruit, on this fruit of tamarind is now basically part of the water, you know, so the fibrous parts are basically what's left. So I'm just mixing it a lot with a spoon and trying to get the pulp out. This is a concentrated version of this water is what you're using when you use tamarind concentrate that you get from a store.
And how much water again, do you say?
So to this, I've basically whatever, you know, in this cup, whatever water you see is what I've used, which is about 3 tablespoons, just enough for the tamarind to be submerged, so that when we are pressing the tamarind down, you want the pulp to come out of the tamarind. So it's a very rough measure. It's basically 2-3 tablespoons, just enough. The cue for me was to submerge the tamarind that I had in my bowl. So take a small bowl and just submerge the tamarind in some water. And then I microwaved it for about 30-40 seconds to get and then the longer it soaks, the pulp really comes out. So while we were waiting for this to cool down, I've definitely extracted a lot of the pulp of this. So I'm just gonna add this water to this. And if you have concentrate, you can also just add the concentrate to the same pan. This entire mixture definitely needs to cool down before we blend it, but that's basically the base for our chutney. So while we wait for this to cool down, what we can do in the meantime is make our dosa batter. So our pesarattu batter, which, so I have, let me move the camera over here. So if you can see this, I have some mung beans and some rice. You can use any short grain rice. I think someone earlier messaged about idli rice. Yes, you can absolutely use idli rice. It can be any kind of short grain rice. So the ratio that I've used here, it's about 1 cup of mung beans and 1/4 cup of rice. If you're using any other lentil, you definitely want to up the ratio of rice in that. So the reason why this recipe doesn't, like, typically most kinds of dosa need fermentation, and they need fermentation because most lentils are not as easy to digest as mung beans are. So you're basically using the fermentation process to help your body with the digestion of these lentils. Mung beans are really easy to digest, so just soaking them for about 6 hours is good enough for your body to be able to digest them. So if you're using any other kind of lentils, you definitely want to use almost a 1:1 ratio, so equal parts of rice to lentil. Soak that for some time, and then you blend it, and you want to set it aside for it to ferment almost overnight. So any other lentil, it kind of becomes hard for your body to digest it. So you want to set it aside overnight, let it, like bubble a little bit. And I'm happy to help you with that, through that fermentation process. You can message me, because that's usually an overnight process. So today we're going to use, make lentils, make our batter from this. Sorry, I was reading the messages and I got distracted. Yeah, so we can make the batter with this so that it's almost ready to use. And that's the awesome thing about making pesarattu with mung beans. Doesn't require any fermentation.
So a couple quick questions. Just
Yes.
going back to the tamarind,
Yes.
can you describe that process again for us, how you made the sauce?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I did was to, we started off with this. So tamarind in the form that you buy from the store, it looks like this, which is just the fruit that's been, the seeds have been removed. So this is the pulpy part of the fruit. If you think of it as a plum that's been cut into half, that's sun-dried, it would end up looking something like this. So I took about half a table tennis ball, or think, about that much, like a quarter-sized sphere of tamarind. And I put that in a small bowl, and I covered it up with enough water to just submerge the tamarind underwater. And then I microwaved it for about 30 seconds just to make sure that the water is hot enough to extract, all the pulp from the tamarind. So this is the extracted tamarind. So there's not much on it. So even when I press with my spoon on this, you don't see too much, because I've taken all the pulpy part of it and I've put it in our peanut and tomato pot pan here. Does that answer the question for whoever asked?
Seems great.
Okay.
And there was a question.
Yes.
And thanks, Champa, for chiming in. But just about mung beans, where you can find them, any best places?
You can find them in just about any store, actually. Like any grocery store, you can find it in the lentil section. So sometimes they come in this whole bean form. Sometimes you also see like a split form. So they come, so the green part that you see out here, if you can, hold on, let me grab another one. So yeah, so the green part out here is the husk. The husk of the bean itself. So the way this grows actually is in a bean pod. Any kind of other beans that you've seen, these mung beans also grow in a bean, in a pod. And within a pod, you'll find like, I don't know, I think about 10 mung beans or so. So sometimes you find them with the husk on, but split into half, or you'll find them whole like this. So you can, in any lentil section, like I've gone to a Publix here, I've gone to a Kroger or H-E-B, any kind of store, Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, wherever you go, if you just go to the lentil section, you'll find them, either the whole ones, but you always want to use the ones with the husk, because the husk is what gives it a lot of fiber, which is again, fantastic for digestion.
Cool. And some questions, I guess they're all part of the lentil family, so related to chickpeas. Okay.
What was the question, Julia? Sorry, I didn't get you.
Oh, I cut out. Are they related to chickpeas? Do you happen to know?
So chickpea is also a kind of bean, and lentils, like these mung beans, are also a kind of bean. So they all grow in a similar way. So in that sense, they're absolutely all related. Pretty much like any lentil that you see in the market, they're all related. The different lentils that we actually see, like the really yellow colored lentil or the white colored lentil, which is called, I have my masala box here, which we're gonna use later. But this is basically a processed chickpea. And what the way this processing works is the husk of the lentil is removed, and then they're halved, because once you remove the husk, then you find two halves inside. Like the moment you remove the husk, you got two halves inside. So these two halves are actually, for them to get it to this form, they're roasted. so that the moisture of the bean is actually removed. And that's how it is sold to us. So this is a roasted chickpea, literally. That's what this is. That's why it shrinks inside. It's called chana dal. And this is another kind of lentil that's also, again, like the husk is removed and it's roasted. So pretty much every lentil that you see in the stores is a partially like processed bean.
Cool. Thank you. That is a beautiful lentil platter you have there.
Yeah, it's called a masala dabba. A dabba just means a box, and this is a mainstay in pretty much every, you know, Indian household. And then the kind of spices you have in here really differs on, you know, the part of India that you're from and what you tend to use more often. So here I have mustard seeds, cumin seeds, black pepper, urad dal, which is what I said, like one of the white lentils. And this is chana dal, which is just a little bit of processed chickpeas. And then I have turmeric. Okay, so that's my masala dabba, which we'll use after we make our chutney. So in the meantime, my pan of peanuts and tomatoes looks like it's cooling down quite well. So in the meantime, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this in a Vitamix. Oh yeah, so couple of things that you need to add to your mixture of lentils and mung beans. Like I'm adding based on your spice tolerance. Okay, so based on your spice tolerance, you can add a little bit of chili flavor to it. Green chili is good, any kind of green chili. Depending on the green chili that you have, the spice level differs. I believe what I'm using here is, I actually don't know. I think this is a kind of a Thai chili, I'm not sure. But you can skip this step if you have low spice tolerance. Now, the second, I'm gonna grab a little bit of ginger now. And in the meantime, if you see any questions, do let me know.
Definitely. And thanks to our experts in the chat who are chiming in and helping us. I'm gonna switch back. A question from Alana. If you want to make these for breakfast, would you suggest soaking the rice and mung beans overnight, or would you make, Yeah,
absolutely. I think like soaking it overnight is absolutely good. Like the longer you soak it, the more bioavailable it becomes for digestion. That's sort of the trick. This is most often, but then again, you don't want to soak it for too long, because the mung beans will start fermenting in the water. So since we are soaking the whole bean itself, 6 to 8 hours is fine. Like overnight is absolutely fine, but you definitely want to blend it first thing in the morning because you don't want it to ferment for too long in that water.
got it. Okay, cool. And it looks like some people are at different places, but when you're going to add this to the blender, do you put the water in as well?
Yeah, so the trick with blending is the more water you have, the harder it gets to form a smooth paste. So I add the water in, but I add it in slowly. I try to get most of the mung beans first and sort of add water slowly. So it goes from like a rough paste to a smoother paste. If you add too much water, the machine just like it won't work as efficiently. So that's the trick with just blending it to a smoother paste. But in the meantime, what I'm doing is, I have some chilies in here. I might not even use the whole piece of ginger here, but I do like my pesarattu with a little bit of ginger flavor. So based on your, whether you like ginger or not, you can add a tiny piece of ginger. You don't even need that much actually. So I'm gonna use about that much. It's about an inch piece of ginger. And I'm just gonna chop it into finer pieces so that it's easier for the blender to do its work. Alrighty, so I'm adding this to my mix here. Let me grab my blender. Yeah, and I think that one of the cool things about beans at large, just production of beans at large, is that most beans do this really cool thing. So most lentils, most beans, as a plant, when they're grown, they do this really cool thing of taking in nitrogen from the atmosphere, and it's called nitrogen fixation. So, you know, the roots of these bean plants, if you guys can see my, oops. Can you see my screens too?
Yeah, now we can see your Vitamix. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so yeah, one of the cool things about bean plants is that they do this thing called nitrogen fixing, which is they take nitrogen from the atmosphere, and the roots form these little nodules, which are processed forms of nitrogen, and it really helps in increasing the fertility of the soil. So if you look at, you know, the way indigenous tribes grow plants, they always grow corn with beans and squash. They're called the three sisters. So even farmers in India do this thing where, so the maturity of most beans is about 2 months. So, you know, if a farmer is using their farm to grow rice, which a lot of farmers do, between the seasons of growing rice, they actually grow a lot of their lentils, because lentils grow in a very short time span, which is 2 months, you know, from planting to harvest is 2 months. And it also helps in increasing the fertility of the soil. So that's so you see, I mean, like India produces so much mung bean because it's used between cycles of growing other crops. So I've added so I took the water out. So what I did was remove the water from the pot of soaking, you know, beans and rice that I had. This barely has any water. Like, you know, if you look at this, right, it barely has any water. It doesn't have too much water in it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep opening the lid in the middle and add a little bit of water so it blends into a smoother paste. So I'm going to try to take this whole thing to my blender so y'all can see. Give me just a second while I set this up. Okay, I'm gonna mute myself so you don't hear blending sound, but this is basically the process. See, I don't have too much water in here. I don't have too much water in here. I'm gonna pulse it a few times, add some more water, pulse it a few more times. And that's how I'm gonna get it to, you know, a paste form. And I'll show you the consistency as I'm, you know, consistency of the final product once I blend it, so you know if you need to blend it some more. But in the meantime, I will mute myself. Julia, is that okay?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
And Anne will get more to your question in a moment. How's everybody else doing? Anyone want to show us how it's progressing in their kitchen? Just sort of hopping on gallery view to check it out. Monique, how are you doing? I'm going to add you to the spotlight, put you on the spot. Oh, wow, you're like 3 steps ahead. I love it. We'll have to see our honorary experts, Parul and Shampa. How does that look? Feel free to unmute and tell us. Oh, maybe they'll come to us. And Dina is showing off her mixer. So we'll check this out. I love everyone's different blenders. We've got Ninja, Blendtec, think of Vitamix. Dina, is it going well there?
I'm not sure. I thought I was supposed to cook them first. I don't know. This is what it looks like. I just put the rice and beans in there with the ginger.
Well, once we have Alak off, well, maybe we'll be able to see.
Yeah, you don't. Yeah, I'm back on. So you don't need to cook them at all. This is a soaked raw, you know, just soaked bean and rice mix with a little bit of chili and ginger, chili optional, that we are just blending here.
Okay. And since it was lentils, I did soak them overnight. So hopefully that'll be long enough.
Yeah, so that's great. But what I would say for you, Dana, is that after you blend it down, I would still say you should ferment it a little longer. We can try making one with what you have, but a blend of just lentils and rice is just much better overnight once it bubbles a bit and has some, you know, fermentation action going for it.
So just leave it in a blender all night with a little water added?
I would say no, blend it to a finer paste. So finer than, I mean, I'm going to show the consistency of this now, but blend it to a finer paste, move it to a container. I would close it and put it in an oven, you know, not a oven that's turned on, but just to sort of trap the heat of it. So we'll just put it in a container, and I can show you how that works. Yeah, but for now, let's get our batter to the right consistency. So I'm going to continue to blend.
Okay, we'll find a way to make it work. That's always what we do in the kitchen. Anyone else want to show us how it's going? Oh, Nicole, I love it. Hold on, let me add you to the spotlight. That looks good. Parul, are you able to unmute on time?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's kind of gritty looking, and I'm wondering if maybe I didn't soak them long enough. It wasn't quite 6 hours.
Can you hold it up a little closer? What do we think? All right, Shampa says gritty is good. Parul, what you thinking?
I don't think the 6 hours should matter that much. I think it's fine.
Yep, and Vidya also. So we've got 3 honorary experts who are chiming in. Looks like you're in a good place. Exciting. Yeah, it looks very similar to, oh, wow, we're getting in the blender. I love it. I love it. So that's the consistency.
So that's the consistency we have. I am actually just to show you all consistency, I'm going to get my fingers in here. But I don't know if you can see, this is almost like a, I don't know if you can see it. There you go. This is almost, you know, there's not much grittiness to it. There, you can definitely feel a texture in here. You know, when you do this with your fingers, there's definitely texture here. But it's almost a pancake batter consistency. So you know, that's how it flows. So I'm gonna pour this out into a bigger container. And while I pour it out, you can actually see the consistency quite well. So let me prop my phone up on a stand for this. And I think we were talking about the 3 sisters before this, so we will definitely get back to that. Okay. Alrighty. So if you look at the flow action here, that's the consistency that I have going.
Yeah, I see what you mean, crepe pancake-like.
Yeah, it's a very like pancake crepe-like batter. What we haven't added to this yet is salt, which is a very crucial ingredient to bring tastes out. So we're gonna mix it with some salt after we're done. Okay, so I've cleaned out most of my batter. So what I started off with is about a cup of mung beans and 1/4 cup of rice, just some short grain rice that I had at home. So that's the amount of salt I'm gonna use. Could possibly use a little more. So and mix it up, and that's basically our batter.
About how much salt would you recommend?
So I added about, I would say a good teaspoon, you know, a heap of a teaspoon. So that's what I would recommend. And, you know, actually I was not a good cook for a very long time. I pretty much just learned it from my mom. One of the things that she always says, you know, and one of the things like even after I knew like what spices to use, how to bring ingredients together, one thing that I would never get right is salt. And it's amazing how much of a difference salt makes to dishes. And the only way to sort of learn how much salt to add is to just taste. And there's nothing wrong with tasting raw mung beans and rice. So I'm actually just gonna taste a little bit of it. If you can taste it, a tiny bit of saltiness, that's perfect. That's where you need to be with your batter. So this, I can definitely have, I can taste the notes of ginger. My saltiness is not there yet. I mean, it's not like I don't taste too many notes of the salt. So I'm actually gonna add a little bit more salt to this. So absolutely feel free to taste your batter. It's all wholesome ingredients. So I've added a little more salt. I'm just gonna mix it a bit. Okay, that looks beautiful. Yes, and one more tip. The reason why we actually add rice to this batter is rice actually when, once you're making our pesarattu or dosas, you'll see that rice is what brings the crispiness to this batter. Like if you were to make this batter just with mung beans, you're gonna end up with like really softer dosas or crepes, but it's the rice that gives it crispiness while it's on the pan. So you can play around with the ratios of that too if you want. You can add different kinds of lentils. The more lentils that you bring to the mix, it's just the longer you'll just have to, ferment it, like like we talked about, which is fermenting overnight, things like that. Okay, so now that we have our batter ready and our pan of tamarind, tomato, and peanut is all cooled down, we will transfer this pan, into a smaller blender so I can make the chutney now. Yeah, and I think we were talking about the three sisters before this. So yeah, the indigenous sort of farming principle or gardening principle, if you'd like, is grow corn, bean, and squash together. The beans need, the beans grow as like a creeper. They need a stalk to sort of wrap themselves around while they're growing, and the corn actually gives those stalks. So when you plant corn, beans, and squash together, squash sort of spreads on the floor and grows just on the floor. The beans wrap themselves around, the bean plant wraps itself around on the corn stalks, and the beans do this amazing job of fixing nitrogen and making the soil super fertile. So yeah, that's why they're called the three sisters. They just really help each other out, and it's a great way of thinking about farming, that you always need a habitat and you need almost an ecosystem where plants are working with each other and helping each other out. So that's sort of the philosophy behind the three sisters. Okay, so I have another little blender here. This is a little steel blender. Since we have a small quantity of peanut and tamarind, I am going to add all of this, just scrape all of it down into this little steel blender. And I'm gonna add a tiny bit of water to this, because as you can see, this mixture is fairly cooked down, right? So there's not too much water in it. So I will add, and I'll show you how much water I'm adding. So I just took a little cup of water. I'm gonna add it to this, and I will blend it. So I'm gonna mute myself again just so you don't hear the blending noises.
I love the comments. Thanks. We have a few really nice threads going. So Alana, you were asking about, it looked like a similar amount of water to the amount of tomatoes and peanuts. Is that correct? We'll just wait for her to come back to confirm. But good question. I hope everyone else is doing well in how it's going in your kitchen, or you're taking great notes for the future. And definitely, if you wind up with a product, a final product, you should tag a Potty Life on Instagram. I'll put Alak's link in the chat again, or you can also tag Tradition Kitchens. We always love seeing what you create. And we will come back in a moment. She's saving our ears by not hearing the blender sound. So. Anyone else made this before? I know Vidya, you've been sharing in the chat a bunch. Maybe we'll add you to the spotlight if you don't mind. Have you made this before? Are you familiar with it? Oh, let's see, you're on mute. There we go. Can you hear us now?
Yes, I've made this many, many times, and Alak is doing an amazing job teaching. I'm learning a few things from her as well. It took me a while to learn how to figure out how to make this and all the nuances that go into making this dish. And it takes a while, so don't be discouraged if it's not perfect the first time. It took me many, many years. But she's doing an amazing job leading this class.
That is so kind of you. I love it. It's great when others have tried something before and then you get to see how others make it and perfect the art. But it seems like an amazing dish to create. So thanks for sharing. We appreciate it.
Thanks for the kind words. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Okay, so I have the blended chutney here. Look at this consistency. So it's got some grittiness in it. You can see bits of the tomato. It's got a nice salmon color to it. I tasted it. I can definitely taste sweet notes from the cherry tomatoes, some tartness from the tamarind, just the amazing flavor of the peanut, all of it blending together to balance it out. You know, from my understanding of Indian cuisine, I think one of the beautiful things Indian cuisine does is to layer on so many different flavors. You know, so you have the sweet, you have the tartness, you have almost like a meatiness from the peanut, the oils and the fat from the peanut. All of these come together really beautifully. This is just 3 ingredients and it already tastes really good. So what I'm gonna do next is a very traditional thing, which you can do if you have whole spices with you. So now I'm gonna use my masala dabba to create something called a tadka or a popu, you know, or a tempering. So, and the concept behind this is that spices, which again, you know, spices come from different parts of the plant. Spices are, you know, they all come in a fairly dry state, and most of them have really amazing chemical compounds, which are stored inside the spices, which only come out, you know, the flavor of the spices really only comes out either when you blend them or when you roast them in some oil. So the concept of tempering or popu or tadka, which you've probably heard of before, if you've made Indian food, is that we're bringing out the elements, the compound, the flavor compounds in these spices by roasting them in a little bit of oil. So I'm gonna grab a fresh shallow pan. Actually, I can't find a fresh shallow pan. I'm just gonna rinse out the one that I used earlier. Julia, are there any questions for me in the meantime?
There was another question. Let me go back. It was just about, oh, did you add a similar amount of water to the amount of tomatoes and peanuts when you were, I think?
Okay, so again, the trick with this is, you know, like this is the consistency that I have for the chutney, but even if it's grittier or if it's thicker, it's okay. So, you know, the amount of water is, it can vary a bit, but the amount that I used was, I took this cup and I filled it up about 1/3 the way. So if I had to measure that, I would say it's about 1/3 of a cup. Like, you know, if you have measuring cups with you, you can take 1/3 of a cup. And what that water is really doing is to help you blend it to the right consistency. Because if you just blended tomatoes and peanuts, it's gonna, you know, the blender is gonna stop at some point because it doesn't have too much room to keep going. There's not enough friction to sort of blend the ingredients together. So you are really adding water to help with the consistency, you know, to bring it to the right consistency, and to just help the blender out. So even if you go up or down, you know, in terms of like, if you go more than 1/3 of a cup, it's okay. You'll still end up with a beautifully delicious chutney. Okay, so if you remember when we were cooking the tomatoes, we did add some salt. So I'm gonna do what I did before, which is taste my chutney. My biggest learning again from learning how to cook with my mom is to not be afraid of tasting your food in the middle. So this tastes good, but it definitely needs more salt because I feel like the flavors can really come together some more. I mean, I taste the individual flavors quite well, but it doesn't sort of come together that well. I mean, I don't taste like an underlying bit of a saltiness to it. So I'm gonna add just a little bit of salt. That's again like start with 1/2 teaspoon, and then you can go up if you need. But you're always better off being conservative with the salt and then adding more. So that's what I've added. I'm just gonna blend it. So I have a fresh saucepan here. I'm just gonna turn it on so that the water can evaporate, because once the water evaporates, I'm gonna add oil to it. But if you have water in the pan, the oil's gonna splutter. So I'm just gonna let the heat do the evaporation for me while I get this chutney ready. So the final step of making this chutney is the tadka. So that's what the tempering that we were talking about, which helps in getting the flavor compounds out from the different spices. So my pan is turning on. My pan is heating up. And this is not mandatory. It's an optional step, you know, to layer on some more flavors to what we already have. But what we have in the bowl right now, that already has a lot of flavors. So if you don't have, you know, like a little spice box or any kind of whole spices with you at home, that's completely okay. So you can absolutely skip this step and just watch me do this. Any other? So this is called. Yeah, so this is, I think someone asked what's in the spice box. So the spice box has, I have whole black pepper. I have mustard seeds. I have some cumin seeds, some turmeric. And my mom does this thing where every time she uses red chilies, because a lot of the heat of the red chilies are in the seeds. So sometimes when she wants to, you know, control the flavor of the spice that she adds to a dish, she just saves all the red chili seeds in here. So this is a box of just saved red chilies from the time that she's used all these red chilies. And this is chana dal, a kind of lentil. This is urad dal, another kind of lentil, which we actually use in tempering. So now what I'm gonna do to this pan, which seems to be taking time. So give me just a second. I'm just gonna wipe this down. All right, okay, so I wiped it down. seems to be heating up fairly well. I'm gonna add about that's 1 teaspoon, about 3 teaspoons of oil. Yeah, I think that should be good.
And what kind of oil are you using?
So I believe what we have in here is, I actually don't know. I think it's a canola oil or a vegetable oil of some sort. But if you have olive oil, that's perfect, because the thing with any other oil that you use, actually the best thing to use is ghee, because ghee has a high smoke point, which means even if you're cooking on a higher temperature, the ghee is going to be just fine. Olive oil has a lower smoke point, but so you don't want to do high flame cooking with olive oil. You can absolutely use ghee. Ghee is actually perfect. Mustard oil is fine. Sesame oil is fine. All of these things add another flavor. So I'm using a fairly neutral oil today.
And then just a quick question to go back to, tell us, why do you use the lentils in tempering spices?
Right, so the lentils are used to bring texture. So I'm gonna use a little bit of, this white colored lentil now. All of these other spices that we use, they have flavor compounds. So that's why we use them. But lentils are really used to add another crunchy texture to any dish that you're making. So, and the lentils actually take the longest to cook. So we start with the lentils. So right now I'm gonna take just a little bit of, just to show you all, I'm gonna take, this chutney, we do make it with a little bit of, this white lentil here. It's called urad dal. So I'm gonna add this lentil first and let it cook in the oil for a bit before I add, let me prop my stand up so that I don't have to keep moving. Okay, so I've added the lentil first because it takes the longest to cook. And then I'm gonna add the other spices. And you can see it moving a little bit. You can, it'll start to, you'll see tiny bubbles. That's when your oil is hot enough and the lentils are roasting well enough. It'll start to change color. We started with a white color lentil. It's going to turn a golden yellow. That's when it's good. Okay, so it's starting to look pretty good. You can see the little bubbles. So I'm going to add the other spices now, because by the time it's all done, it'll be perfect. So I've added a few mustard seeds, some cumin seeds,
we've been having a few questions about the mustard seeds, so here they are. They're making their debut.
Yes.
I have a question. Do they smell like the condiment mustard? I've never seen mustard seeds before.
So mustard seeds actually, like in this form, they don't taste too much like anything, because the flavor of mustard seeds really comes out when you blend it. That's really like, wasabi is, I think, has mustard in it. I think wasabi is made of some kind of mustard. But when you blend mustard, yeah, like it tastes like the Dijon mustard that you have, or just any other kind of mustard that you have. That's really like how it tastes. When you do this in oil, I think the taste doesn't come out as strongly as when you blend it into a paste. But others, who have experience with doing this can chime in. How high is my heat? Like, see, I'm using a cooking range, a really small demonstrative cooking range. So I feel like the heat on this is not as conductive. But if I was doing this on just a regular cooking range that's in my kitchen, I would do all of this on medium heat. I'm maxed out right now, but because this is an electric plate, but I would do this on medium heat if I was doing it in just a regular cooking range. Okay, now you guys have seen the curry leaves that were before. So I just took them all off of that branch. I'm gonna add it to this because you cannot really have a South Indian dish without curry leaves. That's just how it works. So it's gonna splatter, which is why I'm taking it off the pan. Because there's water in the leaves, it tends to immediately like touch the hot oil and splatter, you see that? So I'm just gonna, yeah, it's doing a lot of that splatter action. So I am immediately transferring it into my chutney. Sorry if you didn't get to see that, but I didn't do much to it. I just let the hot oil touch the curry leaves so that it's a little cooked. And then I mixed it into the chutney. So that's it. So our chutney is ready. Our batter for the pesarattu is ready. So now we'll just make 1 or 2 pesarattus and then it's time for us to eat. All right, so that's our chutney with all the spices and the curry leaves. I'm gonna move us to the bigger cooking range that I have here because somehow I've had trouble with making crispy chutneys on the other one. Alrighty, so on this, let me actually start off here.
A question for you, if someone's using dried curry leaves or curry powder instead of the leaves, any recommendations on how much to use?
So the thing with dry curry leaves, like, you know, you saw what happened, right? The moment I put these fresh curry leaves, it started to splatter because there was water inside the leaves themselves. With dry curry leaves, you don't have that problem, but it also means that it's gonna burn really easily because there's not a lot of water inside. So if you're using dry curry leaves, then I would turn off the heat, take the tempering mixture that you have, put the curry leaves in them after it has cooled down a bit so that the leaves don't burn. Now, if you have curry leaf powder, I would actually blend the curry leaf powder into the chutney so that the flavor really just comes out while you're blending it. Or you can absolutely just add it to the chutney itself. You don't need to heat it because you don't wanna risk burning the powder. So I have, you know, any kind of cast iron pan is good. I have a really flat pan here and I have a bit of a concave-ish pan here. So, but any kind of flat pan is great. If you're using a shallower saucepan, the bigger your pan, the bigger your dosa is gonna be. The smaller your pan, the smaller your dosa is gonna be. That's the trick. So if you can grab the biggest pan that you have, then you can have bigger dosas. So I have a really flat pan here, no edges, which means it's easier for me to, you know, there's a lesser risk of me burning my wrists while I'm pulling the dosa out. That's literally what this is about. But any kind of shallow saucepan should do. I've turned on the heat. I'm gonna put it on high for now while, you know, just to get it to heat up really fast. But when you're making dosas, you definitely wanna be on medium. So while this is heating up, I am going to just grab a little bit of oil and keep it ready for use. So what I mean by that is you can take oil in a small little container, just because once we make the pesarattu, you wanna line the edges of the pesarattu with a little bit of oil to help it come off the pan. So it's best, and it's just a few drops. So if you have a container and a little spoon, it's easier to control the amount of oil that you put. And that's really the reason why you're better off using a little container with oil instead of dropping it from your bottle. Okay, this is heating up. While this is heating up, one other thing that I'm gonna do is take a paper towel. Yes, what happens with the onions? The onions are gonna come in as almost like a topper, I would say. Once we make the pesarattu, we're gonna chop up a few onions that you can just sprinkle on top of the pesarattu. Again, that is optional. If you like the flavor of, you know, partially cooked rawish onions, you can do that. I'm gonna do one with the onion topping, one without the onion topping. So while again this is heating up, I'm on I've turned it to medium heat because I wanted to show you how finely the onion needs to be chopped. So I have a red onion here. the very traditional way of eating it is with a topping of onion. So, which is why the onion is in the recipe, but sometimes I just skip that step. Okay, so we don't need too much. I'm just gonna do like about 3 slivers and really finely chopped. Since I have enough for one pesarattu, I think that should be enough. That's good. Okay. So my pan feels pretty hot at this point. And what I mean by that is I'm just, sorry about the internet connection. I'm just hovering my hand on top. I can really feel the heat. So it means it's fairly hot. So the trick with making a good dosa is that you don't want the pan to be so really hot. You know, like temperature management is key. So to help you with temperature management, what we do is take a paper towel, wet the paper towel with just a little bit of water. Help you with moderating temperature. So now I have a wet paper towel. I'm just to show you what I mean. See if I do this, that lowers the temperature of the pan. So now I've lowered the temperature of the pan, which is perfect because it was heating up until now. And what I'm gonna do is I'm taking a bowl, just a little cup. If you, and I'm showing it this way because I'm not sure if everyone will have a soup ladle with them, like a metal soup ladle with them. So I'm using this so it's easier. But we start off in the middle. So I'm pouring my batter and then let it sit there for like 1 or 2 seconds. And I'm using the bottom of this cup to move it around just ever so gently. Don't press it down too much. I'm just using very little force. And it's a slow movement. And it will automatically stick to the pan. And this takes a little bit of practice. So, I think this one's a fairly thick pesarattu. So once you have the batter on there, this is when this little bit of, oil comes in, and I just go around with a few drops just to help the pesarattu with coming off the pan. A couple of drops on the top.
What type of pan is this? It's very cool.
So if you look for a crepe pan, you'll find it, or any kind of cast iron, like Lodge, I think, has a flat pan like this. This is a cast iron pan. But I believe, Lodge has them. So typically what the utensils that we use for making these dosas is literally like crepes, right? So you know how when you make a crepe, you have this wooden utensil that you move the batter around with. What we traditionally do is use a ladle like this, which can hold enough batter, and then you pour it and you do just literally what I did with the cup. So then you move it around, which I'm going to make the next one with this. But you should be able to find just a flat pan, cast iron pan like this. I think Lodge has them. Any kind of crepe pan should work. So you see how beautifully that lifts off. So I'm gonna let it cook a little longer because, as you can see, it's the edges are browning, but the center is not that brown. So just a little longer. And it lifts off the pan so easily also already. So there's no because we did all that temperature management, there's no sticking on the pan. And this is a well-seasoned cast iron pan, so which is why it doesn't stick at all. Okay, so that looks good. Let's do our first flip. There you go. Alrighty. Oh, I forgot to add the onion, of course. So the onion would have gone right here. And actually, when you add the onion, I'm gonna do it in the next round. But when you add the onion, you really don't need to flip it. You just let it sort of cook. You just fold it and let it cook in the folds. So this one is without the onion. This is just a really plain pesarattu. I'm gonna make a couple so you guys, can see them all, see the different techniques that I'm using, and see the process a couple of times. So this looks fairly good, but I like it really brown and crispy. So I'm just gonna let it cook a little more. This is when you sort of have to move around the temperature a bit. So now I'm cooking on medium on my biggest burner. So I've moved to a medium high. Okay, that looks fairly good. I'm just gonna fold it and set it aside on the plate so that, you know, the heat of the pesarattu itself cooks the rest. So this is looking really hot right now. So this is, you know, I can feel the heat like literally from like that height. So I'm gonna bring the temperature down with the trick that we used earlier, which is a wet paper towel. Just go down, bring the temperature down. I'm lowering the temperature also. Now I'm gonna use my little steel ladle. Just 1, 2, 3 seconds and then spread it around. This already comes to a much thinner pesarattu just with the spoon because it's just much easier for me to control it with this one. Alrighty. So if you don't have clean edges, don't worry about it at all. And on this, I'm just gonna top it off with some onion. It tastes really good with the onion actually. Another common thing to do is also top off an egg right here on the top so that you have a really great breakfast meal. I'm still on medium heat at this point. How's everyone doing? Should we do another cam check, Julia?
Yeah, I love it. This looks so beautiful. Let's see how everyone is doing. Nicole, it looks like you might be sampling. I'm going to add you to the spotlight. How's it going?
Well, I think I learned that next time I need to blend it a little bit more, and it needs to be a little bit thinner because it's got little lumps in there and it's kind of thick.
How does your chutney taste though? With the chutney, does it taste good?
I'm not really sure I like the chutney. It just kind of tastes like watery peanut butter. So I'm not sure what I did with that.
I think then you're missing the tartness of the. Did you get to add tamarind today, or did you?
I did. I added tamarind concentrate from a plastic container that I got at H Mart.
Okay,
and then I went back and I added some more. Okay, you added some more. Okay, got it. And then the tomatoes. How many tomatoes did you do? I used 2 large Roma tomatoes, so they weren't, you know, farmers market quality.
Yeah, but I mean that shouldn't make a difference though. Like I mean, usually because when I cook, I just use Roma tomatoes too. So I think if the peanut flavor is what's dominating right now, then it means that, you know, next time you just go a little lower on the peanuts. Or if you want to fix the one that you have, you could actually just cook down a few tomatoes on a pan, just like we did earlier, and add another spoon of tamarind to it, and then blend that mixture separately, and then mix it back into what you have.
I think so. I think the flavor is improving with time.
Yeah.
So the spices that are in there are starting to blend a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's an easy fix. I feel like you can definitely salvage it. Like there's absolutely, it's not far from salvaging. Okay, awesome.
Good.
So that was the second. Sorry, I think I didn't show the second one. The second one, I basically just, I had the onions on top. I just I folded the half, and I'm just letting the onions cook inside with the heat of the heat, the heat that's already in the crepe. So that's my second one. I'm just gonna move it to a plate. So that's the second one. Should we do a third one with an egg on top? Are we interested in the egg version? Okay.
Gwen is interested in the egg, so.
Okay, awesome. So I've reduced the temperature quite a bit on this because it was getting pretty hot. So I'm just going in with this. increasing the heat one more time. Alrighty. So round 3. So if you see the batter doing this, you know, you see like the little holes on the top, it means it's just too hot, basically. That's what that means. You can just go in and fill in those holes. It's fine. Okay. So in this one, I am literally just gonna crack an egg on top. You can see, you know, from the steam, if you can see the steam it basically means it's fairly hot. So a little bit of oil, some on the dosa, some on the pesarattu, and then just cracking an egg right on top. Okay, we're just gonna, and what's gonna help it with cooking is a little little lid on top, just to trap the heat a bit. And the egg's gonna cook much faster. Actually, I think I had too much water on the lid, so I'm gonna just take a dry lid. And if you want a runny egg, then you know you can absolutely just wait for the white of the egg to turn like a solid white, for it, you know, when it's not translucent anymore. Then you would get the perfect consistency of the egg. So my egg moved off center a bit, so it's on the side, but it's okay. Still gonna be a delicious egg. So look, you can see how it's still not fully cooked, right? So there's still more time for the egg to cook. I'll help it move to the center a bit. Nope. Okay, I'm just gonna let it sit. I'm not gonna coerce it to the center. This is if you like a runny egg. If you don't like a runny egg, you can just, you know, I can absolutely just scramble it right here. So just depends on your preference for how you want your eggs. And then just gonna fold it. You can either fold it, you know, just into half and then give that egg some more heat, or you can fold it like a good little buckwheat crepe. So just like that. And you can top this with vegetables. You can top it with anything else that you'd like. You know, just treat it like just a regular crepe. So that's my little egg pesarattu, which I'm now moving to the side. You can see how it's a beautiful little runny egg in the center. Right, I'm gonna go back to the chutney and then taste the two of these together.
The colors are so vibrant. I love
it.
them.
So I can absolutely eat this, you know, with a side of tomatoes. You can really pair this with vegetables, you know, however you'd like, with whatever kind of vegetables that you want. You can pair this with a little bit of, the chutney is almost a dipping sauce for this. I mean, that's what it is actually. That's exactly it. It's a chutney, the dipping sauce for these dosas. Yeah, I'm actually gonna try a little piece. I'm really used to eating dosas with my hands, so that's what I'm gonna do. I usually just dip it in a little bit of chutney, get a bit of that runny egg. That's really good.
Nice. I'm gonna add Celeste, who just said hers turned out delicious. What I let you know. Feel free to unmute on the left-hand side. Maybe not able to do that. Let's see, unmute. I might be able to unmute you. Okay, I think you're unmuted. Celeste?
Okay.
Oh, she's gonna show us, bring us over to the kitchen.
This is the one with the egg, is still cooking.
Nice.
And then these are two that I did.
Oh, pan a little down so we can see it. Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
The chutney.
Wow.
Very good.
Nice. Way to go. Any flavors stand out in particular to you?
I like the combination of the tomatoes and the peanuts and the chutney.
Wonderful. It's great. Thank you for sharing. I'm gonna put you on mute and unspotlight you. Anybody else want to show us on the kitchen cam if you've cooked along with us? Let's see, I'm scanning. Nicole, let's come back to you. Add you to the spotlight. Let me unmute you. Let's see. Oh, you might be able to do it yourself. Yeah, I can't.
There, here I am. Okay, so I put a little slices of red pepper in there and a little cilantro just to make it look nice. And
amazing.
I have one with egg and one plain.
That looks so good. That's fantastic. Please do tag me. I'm at podi.life, Podi Life. If you want to send me a picture, or if you're not tagging, just I'd love to see all of your creations. These look amazing.
Okay.
And the cilantro is a fantastic idea. That's what my mom does too. She definitely adds cilantro to her chutneys. And oh yeah, I wanted to give everyone a tip. So in the same chutney recipe that we did, so today we highlighted, tomatoes, tamarind, and peanuts. This same chutney can be done with, you can make this with coconut. So let's say you have fresh coconut, you can make it with that. You can make it with one kind of lentil. You can make your chutney with that as well. But you can also do like a blend of these, add some green chili. Yeah, you can try a bunch of different ingredients. The taste that you really want to bring out with your chutney is a little bit of tartness, a little bit of sweetness, a little bit of nuttiness. So you can definitely like play around with it. It's the same concept, the steps that we follow today, which is bringing it down, really cooking it, and then just blending it and adding a tempering on top. So that's the template for making a chutney.
Awesome. Thank you. This is great. Well, I think we're very close to wrapping up. Any final questions from our audience? You have some new fans. And Nicole, I see you taking a photo of your food. Yay. Definitely tag a Podi Life and Tradition Kitchens on your favorite social media accounts. We'd love to see what it turned out to look like for everyone. Oh, a picture. I love it. A live class photo. All right. Well, we want to thank everyone for your time. Thank you to our amazing teacher, of course, for sharing her story with all of us. And it's been so fun to learn from you. Absolutely enjoyed this time together. Our classes happen about every 2 weeks. You can keep an eye on our social media for what's coming up next. We have an exciting end of summer into fall. So next up on the 27th will be Singaporean noodles with Rosh. And then there's many more classes coming, from Thai to Vietnamese to another Indian class. We're just really excited to celebrate other cultures and cooking with all of you. So if any of you are interested in teaching, I know a few of us have messaged back and forth, please send us an email or a DM. You can reach us at cookingwithtradition@gmail.com or Tradition Kitchens on Instagram and Facebook. With that, we will call it a class, and thank everyone again, and appreciate your time and learning from you today. Alak, thank you so much.
Thank you, Julia. Looking forward to keeping in touch with you all. We also do some cooking classes, so please do join us if you're interested. Thank you so much for taking the time for joining us here.
Yes, and everyone should check out your beautiful spices that they can order. Do you deliver in the States as well?
Yes, all across the States. Yeah, definitely check it out. DM me with any questions.
Love it, love it. I know we had one person who had a little bit of, who cooked before blending, and I'm trying to remember who that was, but if you want to stay on the line, we could do a little quick troubleshooting perhaps. So I'm going to stop recording, and have a great rest of your day, morning, evening, wherever you are.